If someone broke into your house tonight, you'd call 911. Officers would show up, take a report, maybe find the guy. That entire chain of events, a stranger with a badge showing up to fight your battle for you, is something Rome never had. Not once. Not for 900 years. You could be robbed, beaten, even killed in broad daylight in the greatest city on earth, and no government agency was coming to help you. So, how did the most powerful empire in history run without a single police officer? The answer says something uncomfortable about what law and order actually means and how recent our version of it really is. Rome didn't lack organization. It built roads that still exist. It moved armies across 3 continents on schedule. It had a legal code so advanced that modern law still borrows from it. But somehow, the idea of a government force whose job was to protect ordinary citizens from crime never occurred to them. Because in Rome, justice wasn't something the state gave you. It was something you were expected to take. Let's start with the 12 Tables, Rome's earliest written laws carved into bronze around 450 BCE and displayed in the Forum for everyone to see. You'd expect a legal code to start with something like, "The state shall punish theft." It doesn't. It starts with instructions for you. One line says that if someone refuses to appear in court, you're allowed to physically drag them there yourself. Another says that if a thief is caught in your house at night, you're legally allowed to kill him on the spot. No trial required. Think about that. The law wasn't written to tell the government what to do. It was written to tell citizens what they were permitted to do to each other, because there was no one else to do it. Rome had magistrates, elected officials who oversaw the courts. But a magistrate didn't investigate anything. He didn't send anyone to find your stolen goods. He didn't take witness statements. His job started only after you had already done all of that yourself. If your neighbor stole your ox, it was on you to identify the thief, gather your own evidence, physically bring that person before a magistrate, and argue your case, sometimes literally dragging him there by the collar, which was legal. The state showed up only to referee. Everything before that point was your problem. And this wasn't a temporary gap while Rome figured things out. This was the system for centuries. So what happened if you were poor? If you didn't have the strength to drag a wealthy man into court, or the money to hire someone who could argue for you? This is where it gets uncomfortable. You attached yourself to someone powerful. Rome ran on something called the patron-client system. A patrician, a wealthy, well-connected Roman, would take on dozens, sometimes hundreds of clients. In exchange for political support and loyalty, the patron used his influence, his money, and sometimes his private muscle to protect his clients from harm. If you were wronged, you didn't call the authorities. You went to your patron. If your patron was powerful enough, the person who wronged you backed off, not because the law scared them, but because your patron did. Justice in Rome wasn't blind. It was personal, and it scaled directly with how many powerful friends you had. If you had none, you had almost no protection at all. By the late Republic, this system was already showing cracks. Rome had grown into a city of over 1 million people, and street violence had become a real political weapon. In the 60s and 50s BCE, 2 men named Clodius and Milo ran organized gangs that fought each other openly in the streets of Rome, for political control, not for money. These weren't rogue criminals hiding in alleys. They operated in daylight, sometimes with senators watching. There was no police force to stop them because there was nothing shaped like a police force to begin with. The only thing standing between order and chaos was whoever currently had the bigger gang. In 52 BCE, it got so bad that Milo's men killed Clodius on the Appian Way in broad daylight. Riots broke out. A mob burned down the Senate House itself using Clodius's own funeral pyre. Rome had no 911 to call. It barely had a government that could respond. This is the part most people get wrong about ancient Rome. We picture legions, aqueducts, incredible engineering, a civilization so advanced it built things we still can't replicate. And yet, if you got mugged walking home, you were completely on your own. It took an emperor to finally do something about it, but even then, not for the reason you'd expect. In 6 CE, Augustus created a unit called the Vigils, usually translated as watchmen. For the first time, Rome had a paid, organized force patrolling the streets at night. This sounds like the beginning of policing. It wasn't. The Vigils weren't created to stop crime. They were created to stop fires. Rome's apartment buildings, called insulae, were packed tightly together and built mostly out of wood. Fires spread fast and killed constantly. The vigils patrolled at night mainly to spot smoke early and organize bucket brigades. Catching criminals was, at best, a side effect of guys who happened to be walking around with weapons after dark. It was never their actual mission. Even Augustus, the man who reorganized nearly every institution in Rome, never built a force whose sole job was protecting citizens from each other. Why not? Because in Roman thinking, crime between citizens wasn't really the state's problem to solve. It was a personal dispute the state occasionally refereed. The government's job was to defend Rome from outside threats and keep the peace among the powerful, not to individually protect a shopkeeper from a pickpocket. That idea that ordinary people deserve active protection just for existing in public barely existed anywhere in the ancient world. It wouldn't fully exist anywhere for almost 2,000 more years. The world's first organized police force in the modern sense wasn't created until 1829 in London by a man named Robert Peel. Before that, in most of human history, if you were harmed, the responsibility to respond fell on you, your family, or whoever you could convince to care. Rome ran an empire of over 50 million people for centuries on exactly that principle. Which means the system you rely on right now, a stranger with a badge and legal authority arriving specifically to protect you, isn't some ancient obvious feature of civilization. It's incredibly new. For most of human history, if something happened to you, no one was coming. You were the entire justice system. And somehow, out of that same world, came aqueducts, roads, and an empire that lasted 1,000 years.